The rain poured heavily over the grand marble driveway of the Han Corporation mansion, its rhythmic splatter against the windows echoing the tension that lingered in the air inside. Every corner of the place spoke of wealth, glass chandeliers, imported Italian furniture, and quiet maids moving in disciplined grace. Yet amidst all that perfection sat a man whose heart was far from it. Han Min-ha, 28, CEO of one of South Korea's largest conglomerates and head of a secret mafia network disguised under legitimate business fronts, sat behind his mahogany desk, his sharp jawline tense, his dark eyes fixed on the rain. His tailored suit fit him like armor, neat, flawless, but cold. He was a man of control, a man used to people trembling when he spoke. And now he was married to a woman he didn't choose. When she arrived at the Han mansion a week earlier, she had been the picture of grace. Her dark ebony skin glowed even beneath the soul drizzle, her long black curls bouncing against the white wool coat she wore. She was beautiful in a way that silenced a room, but not in the fragile, porcelain way the women of Minha's world were. There was something bold, wild, and untamed in her aura, a fire that didn't beg to be tamed. And that was exactly what Minha hated about her. Their marriage had been arranged by his father, Han Suk-min, as a business alliance between Han Corporation and Chi's late father's African logistics empire. She had agreed to it to save her mother's business. Minha had agreed only out of obligation, not love. Now, 1 week into the marriage, they barely spoke. She slept in the guest room. He didn't care, or so he told himself. That morning, she stood in the living room, examining the huge painting of Seoul's skyline. She wore a soft cream dress that complemented her dark skin like liquid gold, her long curls falling freely down her shoulders. The staff watched her quietly, whispering in awe, the mysterious African bride of the cold CEO. "Good morning, Mr. Han," she said coolly when he entered the room, not even looking up. Minha paused, his gaze cold and cutting. "You could at least pretend to sound like a wife." She turned her head slightly, her eyes calm. "You could at least pretend to sound like a husband." The staff froze. The butler coughed awkwardly and excused himself. Minha's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Mrs. Han." "Watch your pride, Mr. Han," she countered, then added quietly, "I'm not one of your subordinates." Her voice was low, smooth like honey, but her words had teeth. It struck him harder than he expected. No woman dared talk back to him. Minha clenched his jaw and turned sharply away. "You're here because of a contract. Nothing more." She smiled faintly. "And yet you seem bothered that I don't sleep in your room." That made him stop mid-step. His chest tightened. "You're not worth my bed." "Good," she said simply, brushing past him, the scent of her rose perfume lingering in the air, sweet, defiant, intoxicating. "Because I don't like cold sheets." That night, she sat by the window of the guest room, gazing at the Seoul city lights. She missed home, the warmth of the African sun, the laughter of her younger sister, the colorful chaos of Lagos streets. Korea felt distant, sterile, and filled with stares that questioned her place. But what stung her most wasn't the coldness of the mansion, it was the coldness of the man she was now tied to. She sighed, then whispered, "Why did I agree to this, Papa?" Her father had died before the wedding. His last wish had been for her to find stability, and Han Corporation offered that. Yet sitting there, in a guest room of her own marriage, she wondered if she had traded her soul for her mother's comfort. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said. The door opened slightly. Mrs. Kim, the head maid, peeked in. "Madam, Mr. Han asked if you'll be joining him for dinner tonight." She smiled faintly. Did he really ask, or did he order? Mrs. Kim hesitated. He mentioned it politely. Chi chuckled softly. "Then tell him politely that I'm not hungry." The maid looked torn but nodded and left. When Mrs. Kim reported back, Minha didn't react, at least not outwardly. He only said, "Tell her she can eat whenever she feels like it." But the way he stabbed his steak knife into his plate made the butler quietly excuse himself again. The next morning, Minha found Chi in the garden, tending to a small flower bed. Her hands were covered in soil, her face slightly glistening with sweat. She looked out of place, a foreign queen planting roses in enemy territory. "You don't need to do that," he said flatly, standing behind her. "I like plants," she replied without looking up. "They grow when you nurture them. You should try it sometime." He folded his arms. "You're implying I don't nurture things?" She stood, turning to him, meeting his eyes directly. "Do you?" Their eyes locked, his cold steel against her warm defiance. "I nurture empires," he said. She smiled. "Empires don't have hearts." That smile, that quiet confidence, made something stir in him. Annoyance, yes, but something else too. Something dangerously close to admiration. He stepped closer. "You seem to think you can challenge me." "I don't think," she said softly. "I just don't fear you." For the first time in years, Han Minha didn't have an answer. Later that evening, Minha attended a secret meeting in one of his private clubs downtown. In the Underworld, he wasn't just a CEO, he was the Ghost King. Cold, ruthless, unforgiving. "Boss," said Jinte, his right-hand man, as he entered the dimly lit room. The shipment from Lagos was delayed again. The new port manager says there's interference from Chi's old contacts. Minha's eyes flicked upward. "Chi." "Yes, boss. Seems someone in her late father's circle is still trying to protect her interests." Minha's jaw tensed. "Handle it quietly. I don't want her involved." Jinte smirked. "You sound like you care." Minha shot him a look sharp enough to kill. "I don't. She's just a complication." But the lie echoed hollow in his own chest. Later that night, Minha returned home past midnight. The mansion was quiet except for the sound of rain again. As he passed the guest room, he noticed the door slightly open, light spilling from within. Curiosity got the better of him. He peeked in. She had fallen asleep on the couch with an open book on her chest, a soft blanket barely covering her. Her long curls framed her face, and her breathing was slow, steady, peaceful. He hesitated, then stepped closer. He reached out instinctively to pull the blanket up, brushing a loose curl from her cheek. The warmth of her skin, the softness, it hit him unexpectedly. He froze. She stirred slightly, whispering something in her sleep. "Papa." His heart clenched. He took a quiet breath and left before she woke. But that night, for the first time since the wedding, Han Min-ha couldn't sleep. The next morning, Chi walked into the dining room wearing a loose white shirt and jeans, her natural curls falling around her shoulders. She looked relaxed, and he, sitting at the table, found himself staring longer than usual. She noticed. The black limousine glided through Seoul's evening traffic, its tinted windows reflecting 1,000 city lights. Inside sat two people whose silence said more than any argument could. She sat on one end, gazing out the window at the blur of neon and rain-wet streets. Her gown, an elegant black velvet dress with a plunging neckline, shimmered with each passing light. Her long black curls cascaded down her shoulders like silk. She looked breathtaking, almost regal. And she knew it. Opposite her sat Minha, dressed in a classic black tuxedo, one hand resting on his chin. His eyes darted briefly toward her, but quickly away again. The tension between them was tangible, like a string pulled too tight. After several minutes, Chi broke the silence. "You look uncomfortable, Mr. Han. Is it the tuxedo or my presence?" He didn't look up. "Neither. I just don't like pretending." She turned toward him, arching a brow. "Then don't. You're good at being cold." He finally met her gaze. "And you're good at provoking." A faint smirk tugged at her lips. "Somebody has to make sure your blood still flows." Minha leaned back, almost smiling. "Careful, Mrs. Han. I might start enjoying your company." "Wouldn't that be tragic?" she murmured, looking away again, though a small, uninvited smile played on her lips. The car pulled up before the Grand Hyatt Seoul. Paparazzi flashes exploded like fireworks. As the door opened, the cold wind hit them, and so did the world's eyes. "Ready?" he asked curtly. "I was born ready," she replied. He stepped out first, offering his hand to her. She hesitated for a second before taking it. His hand was warm, steady, surprisingly gentle, a contrast to the reputation that trailed behind him. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she emerged. The photographers went wild, calling out, "Mrs. Han, look this way." "Mr. Han, smile for the camera. Is it true your marriage was arranged?" She maintained a calm, graceful smile, slipping her hand into the crook of Minha's arm. His posture stiffened, then slowly eased. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Smile wider. You're my wife tonight," she whispered back. "Only tonight?" He glanced sideways at her, that dangerous glint returning to his eyes. "We'll see." Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and whispers. Seoul's elite floated between tables, champagne glasses in hand. The orchestra played soft jazz, but beneath the polished elegance, the air pulsed with hidden rivalries and curiosity. Minha was surrounded instantly. "CEO Han, you never bring dates," said one executive. "This must be the mysterious bride," another murmured, looking Chi up and down with thinly veiled surprise. Minha's expression hardened. "She's my wife. That's all you need to know." Chi smiled sweetly, her voice soft but firm. "And he's lucky, though he won't admit it." Laughter rippled among the guests, and for the first time that night, Minha looked at her not as a stranger, but as someone who could disarm a room faster than he could. When the orchestra shifted to a waltz, the MC's voice echoed. "Mr. and Mrs. Han, would you honor us with the opening dance?" Chi blinked. "Excuse me?" Minha extended his hand. "Come." She hesitated. "You don't even like me." His eyes softened, barely. "We're in public. Pretend." She stared at him for a long moment, then placed her hand in his. The music began. At first, it was mechanical, two unwilling souls circling each other out of obligation. But as the rhythm settled, their movements began to synchronize. Her hand rested on his shoulder, his palm pressed lightly against her waist. She could feel the heat of his skin through the thin fabric. He could smell her perfume, soft, floral, addictive. "You're a surprisingly good dancer," she murmured. "You're surprisingly distracting," he replied without thinking. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. For the first time, the cold CEO faltered. The look she gave him, confident, amused, beautiful, cracked something deep in his chest. The music slowed. They stopped. Applause thundered around them, but neither of them heard it. Later, while Minha spoke to investors, she found herself at the balcony overlooking the city. She sipped her champagne quietly, feeling the chill of the night air. The lights of Seoul twinkled below, distant, indifferent. "You stand out," a male voice said behind her. She turned to see Yunjae, Minha's rival in both business and reputation. Tall, charming, with a predatory smile. "Do I?" she asked calmly. "You do. The crowd can't take their eyes off you, especially your husband. I've never seen Han Minha look so human." She laughed softly. "Maybe that's the problem." Yunjae stepped closer. "If he ever forgets what he has, call me. I don't make the same mistakes." Before Chi could reply, a low voice interrupted, smooth, dangerous. "She's not available." Minha peered behind them, eyes sharp as glass. He stepped between them, his hand sliding around Chi's waist in a possessive gesture that startled even her. Yunjae smirked. "Relax, old friend. Just talking." Minha's tone was cold. "Talk to someone else." Yunjae chuckled and left, but not before whispering to Chi, "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Han." When he was gone, Chi turned to Minha. "You didn't have to act like that." He faced her fully. He was flirting. "So? You don't even like me." His jaw flexed. "That doesn't mean I want anyone else touching what's mine." Her eyes widened. "What's yours?" He realized too late what he'd said. Silence hung thick between them. Then she set her glass down and stepped closer, her voice low. "You don't get to call me yours, Minha. Not until you start acting like it." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, breathless, confused, and angry at himself for caring. Back in the car, the silence returned, but this time it was heavy, charged. Raindrops streaked the windows again. Finally he spoke. About what I said. Forget it, she cut in. He frowned. Chi. I said forget it. You can't keep switching between cold and warm like a broken heater. He almost smiled at that, but her tone was too serious. Why does it bother you so much? He asked quietly. She turned to him. Because I don't know which version of you is real. He had no answer. He only stared at her, at the stubborn tilt of her chin, the vulnerability hiding in her eyes. Something twisted inside him, sharp and unfamiliar. When they reached the mansion, she stepped out first, heels clicking on the marble floor. He followed her up the staircase, their reflections trailing along the mirrored wall, distance and desire side by side. At her door, she turned. Good night, Mr. Han. Chi, he said, before he could stop himself. She paused. He took a step closer. You looked beautiful tonight. Her breath caught. That's not something you say to someone you hate. I never said I hated you, he replied softly. You didn't have to. She opened her door and slipped inside, closing it quietly behind her. Minha stood there for a long time, hand half raised, unsure whether to knock again. An hour later, unable to sleep, Minha found himself outside her door once more. He didn't even know why. He knocked lightly. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened slightly. She stood there in a silk robe, her curls slightly messy from sleep. Do you ever rest? He swallowed. Can we talk? She sighed but stepped aside. Make it quick. He entered. The room smelled of jasmine and rain. She crossed her arms, waiting. I said something I shouldn't have, he began. At the party. She shrugged. I'm used to it. He frowned. I meant what I said about you looking beautiful. Chi's lips parted slightly, her expression softening despite herself. You're confusing. Maybe, he said quietly. But tonight, when you smiled, I forgot why I was supposed to hate you. Her heart skipped. For a moment, neither moved. Then she looked away. You should go, Minha. He took a slow step toward her. You want me to. She looked up, meeting his gaze, that flicker of warmth fighting against all her defenses. Don't, she whispered. He stopped just inches from her. His hand lifted, brushing a curl from her cheek, the same gesture from nights before, but this time she didn't pull away. His thumb grazed her jaw, his breath mingling with hers. Tell me to stop, he said. But she couldn't. For a brief, electric second, their lips hovered close, almost touching, before she stepped back, breaking the spell. I'm not one of your deals, Minha. You can't negotiate affection. He froze, his chest rising and falling. Then he nodded slowly. I'll wait until it's not a deal. And with that, he turned and left, leaving her heart pounding, her mind reeling, and her lips trembling from the kiss that almost happened. The rain had stopped the next morning, leaving the Seoul skyline washed clean and gleaming under pale sunlight. Inside the Han mansion, everything looked as perfect as ever, but inside Minha, nothing was the same. He sat in his office, unable to focus on the numbers flickering across his laptop screen. Chi's voice from last night kept replaying in his head. I'm not one of your deals, Minha. You can't negotiate affection. He had built an empire by controlling every move, every breath of his world. But Chi was the one variable that refused to obey his rules, and he was starting to realize he didn't want her to. Chi descended the staircase slowly, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in quiet Yoruba to her mother. Minha watched from the hallway, unseen. Her laughter floated through the air like music, soft, warm, and terribly human. When she hung up, he stepped forward. Good morning, he said, his voice gentler than usual. She looked surprised. Good morning. You're awake early. I didn't sleep, he admitted. Thinking about business again? He hesitated, then said, something like that. She offered a small smile. Try resting once in a while, CEO Han. Even ice melts if it's under pressure too long. His lips twitched. Are you calling me ice? I'm calling you frozen potential, she said, passing him. You'd be much more interesting if you thawed. Later that afternoon, Minha met with Jin-tae in the underground garage. The air was heavy with oil and tension. The Lagos route was sabotaged again, Jin-tae reported. Looks like someone wants to expose our shadow shipments. Find out who, Minha ordered. And keep Chi out of it. Jin-tae frowned. Boss, the interference started after she came. Her father's people are mixed in with ours. She might know something. Minha's eyes hardened. You think I don't know that? Then what are you going to do? He didn't answer immediately. The thought of confronting Chi, accusing her, twisted something in his chest. Finally, he said, I'll handle it. That evening, Chi was in the garden again, trimming roses under the glow of sunset. She hummed softly, an African melody that didn't belong to this cold city, but somehow made it warmer. Minha approached quietly. You like roses? They fight to bloom, she said without turning. Even with thorns. Reminds me of you. She looked up at him, slightly startled. Was that a compliment? He stepped closer, his eyes unreadable. Maybe. Their gazes held, a quiet electricity pulsing between them. Then his tone shifted. Chi, I need to ask you something. She straightened. What is it? He hesitated, the question heavy on his tongue. Are you still in contact with anyone from your father's company? Her expression changed, surprise, then hurt. You think I'd betray you? I think people protect what they love, he said carefully. I don't love your business, she replied, her eyes glistening. And I'm not one of your enemies. The disappointment in her voice sliced through him. Before he could speak again, she dropped her gloves and walked away, her shoulders stiff. He stood there in silence, the scent of roses and regret filling the air. That night, the mansion alarms blared. Minha was already halfway down the hall when he heard the shout. Boss! Intruders on the east wing. He burst into the guest hallway just as two masked men smashed through the window. One of them grabbed Chi, who screamed, struggling against his grip. Let her go! Minha roared, lunging forward. Gunfire cracked through the corridor. He tackled the man holding her, disarming him with ruthless precision. The other attacker aimed again, but Jin-tae appeared from behind, taking him down. When the chaos cleared, Minha turned to Chi. She was trembling but unhurt, her wide eyes fixed on him. You're okay, he said, checking her arms. His voice shook slightly. You're safe. Who were they? She whispered. He didn't answer. He just pulled her into his chest, instinctively, desperately. For the first time, she didn't pull away. Minutes later, he led her into a secure room behind his office. The heavy door shut, sealing them away from the outside world. She sat on the couch, still shaken. Minha, she said softly. Why did they come here? What's going on? He exhaled slowly. The truth hung heavy in his mind, but he wasn't ready to give it all yet. Someone wants to hurt me, he said finally. And they used you to get to me. Her eyes widened. Used me? They knew you're my wife, he said. They assumed I'd protect you. She stared at him. Would you? His gaze locked with hers, deep, dark, conflicted. I already did. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then she reached out, her fingers brushing his hand, a small gesture, but it felt like the world shifted. Thank you, she whispered. He looked down at their joined hands. Don't thank me. I couldn't stand seeing you hurt. The quiet stretched, thick and magnetic. Her breathing slowed. His fingers curled around hers almost without thought. The air between them grew warmer, heavier. Chi's voice came out barely above a whisper. Minha. He looked up. Her eyes, soft, uncertain, met his. Without words, he lifted a hand to her cheek. She didn't move. Tell me to stop, he murmured again, just like before. She didn't. His thumb traced her jawline, lingering near her lips. Their breaths mingled, hesitant, searching. Then slowly, inevitably, he leaned in. The kiss was gentle at first, a question, not a claim. Her lips trembled against his, tasting of fear, warmth, and something dangerously close to trust. Then she kissed him back, and the room seemed to tilt. He pulled away only when breath became impossible. His forehead rested against hers, their hearts racing in sync. I shouldn't have, he began. She smiled faintly. Then don't apologize. Later, When she finally fell asleep in the safe room, he sat awake, watching her from across the couch. The moonlight traced her face in silver. Every breath she took felt like proof that he still had something human inside him. Jintae's voice buzzed in his ear through the earpiece. "Boss, the attackers were hired. Looks like someone from the Lagos branch tipped them." Minha's eyes darkened. "Find out who." Then he looked back at Chi, peaceful, fragile, unaware of the storm outside. He whispered to himself, "Whoever touches her again dies." The storm returned 3 nights later. Thunder rolled through the Seoul sky, as if the heavens themselves were preparing for war. In the grand mansion of Han Corporation, the lights were dimmed and the air thick with unspoken tension. Han Minha stood at the window of his study, staring out into the rain. His reflection looked back at him, sharp suit, tired eyes, and a heart that no longer obeyed him. He'd spent years mastering control, but love had undone him in weeks. Behind him, Jintae entered quietly.
"Boss,
"We found out who hired the attackers." Minha turned slowly.
who?"
Jintae hesitated. "It came from Lagos, but the money trail ends in Seoul." "Who's behind it?" Minha pressed. Jintae's eyes lowered. "Your father's board member, Chairman Kwon.
He wanted Chi dead.
Said her father left documents that could destroy your entire network." Minha's blood ran cold. Documents. Her father hid records of the shipments, the illegal ones, before he died. Kwon wants to expose them to take over the company. Minha's hand clenched into a fist. And she had no idea? She didn't. But he believed she did. Down the hall, Chi sat in her room, clutching her phone. The news from Lagos had shattered her peace. Her father's trusted lawyer had been found dead, his files stolen. Everything pointed toward Han Corporation. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to believe that Minha's empire and his love were built on the same corruption that had ruined her father. When the door opened and Minha entered, soaked from the rain, she rose quickly. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "Handling it." "Handling what, Minha? Another secret?" He sighed, running a hand through his wet hair. "You don't understand." "No," she cut in, tears rising. "You don't understand. People from my father's company are dying, and somehow it all leads here." He stepped closer. "Because someone wants to destroy both of us." "Both of us?" she said bitterly. "Or just you?" He froze. The distance between them felt wider than ever. "You think I'd hurt you? I don't know what to think anymore." Her voice cracked, and it broke something inside him. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Tell me the truth," she whispered. "Were you part of the deals that killed my father's company?" The silence stretched. His eyes lowered. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." Her breath hitched. You what?" "I didn't know it would destroy them," he said, his voice shaking. "It was years ago, before I met you. I signed the contracts. I was young, angry, trying to prove myself to my father. But your father, he was innocent. I found out too late." Chi's tears fell freely now. "And you still married me." "I married you because I was told to," he admitted. "But I stayed because I fell for you." She laughed bitterly through her tears. "You expect me to believe that?" He stepped closer. "Believe what you want, but I'd burn everything I own if it meant keeping you safe." That night, Minha received a message from Chairman Kwon's men. "If you want your wife alive, bring the documents." Minha didn't think twice. He left before dawn, taking the files Jintae recovered from their secret servers, proof of Kwon's betrayal and his own sins. But she woke to find him gone. A note sat on her pillow. "Don't look for me. If I don't return, live freely." Minha. Tears blurred her vision. She grabbed her coat and ran out into the rain. The old warehouse by the Han River smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Minha entered alone, his footsteps echoing through the hollow space. Chairman Kwon stood at the far end, flanked by armed guards. "Han Minha," he sneered. "The Ghost King himself.
You could have joined me.
Instead, you chose love." "I chose conscience," Minha said coldly. "Something you lost years ago." Kwon smirked. "Then die with it." The gunfire erupted before Minha could move. He dove behind a steel crate, returning fire with deadly precision. One guard went down, then another. But Quan had numbers. Then, a door slammed open. Minha. Chi's voice.
He froze, eyes widening.
Chi. No. She ran inside, clutching a folder, her father's last file. He didn't hide it to destroy you. He hid it to expose Quan. He was trying to protect your company. Quan turned his gun toward her. Too late. The shot rang out, but before Chi could even flinch, Minha lunged forward, shielding her. The bullet hit him. The world slowed. Rain poured through the broken roof as Chi fell to her knees, holding Minha's bleeding body. Minha. No, no, no. He coughed, blood staining his lips. I told you. I'd burn everything for you. Don't talk, she sobbed. You're going to be fine. You'll. He lifted a trembling hand, brushing a tear from her cheek. Chi. I'm sorry. She shook her head.
No.
You can't apologize now. You can't leave me. He smiled faintly. You were right. I was iced until you. Then his eyes fluttered shut. Gunfire returned. Jin-tae and the police stormed in, taking down Quan's men. Quan was arrested. The documents Chi brought cleared her father's name and exposed the corruption. But Chi didn't hear the chaos. She only held Minha, whispering his name over and over. A year later, spring in Seoul came early the next year. Cherry blossoms lined the Han River, soft pink petals dancing on the breeze. Chi stood by the water, a gentle wind tugging at her curls. She wore a long white dress, her hands holding a small silver necklace, Minha's. Inside was a photo of them from the charity ball, smiling for the first time. Jin-tae approached quietly. He'd be proud of you. The company's clean now. His father stepped down. Chi smiled softly. He always wanted to fix what was broken. Jin-tae nodded.
He did. You.
She laughed lightly through tears. He said he'd wait until it wasn't a deal. And he did, she whispered. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the sunlight touched the river like gold. Somewhere, she could almost feel him, his voice in the wind, his warmth in the memory of their kiss. I was ice until you. She smiled, wiping a tear. Then melt wherever you are, Minha. I'll keep blooming. As she walked away, petals swirled around her, a soft farewell written in pink and rain. Months later, the Han Corporation launched a new foundation in Chi's name, one that supported widows, small businesses, and global partnerships between Korea and Africa. At the unveiling ceremony, Chi stood before the press, poised and radiant. This isn't just about rebuilding, she said. It's about learning that even the coldest hearts can change, if given a reason to love. And somewhere beyond the crowd, as the spring breeze danced around her, she thought she heard his voice again, soft, proud, eternal. You were my reason.